For all you other mere mortals like myself, we have to get a little bit more creative with our arm training, and I'm going to give you guys 2 tips today based on physiology, anatomy, biomechanics, and my experience with bodybuilding coaching. Now, tip number 1 to grow bigger biceps is going to be to refine your exercise selection using some more advanced anatomy. Now, some of you more red folks out there probably know there's 2 heads to the biceps, hence the name biceps. And depending on how you position your shoulders and elbows, you can elicit different activation in these muscles, but there's also 2 other muscle groups people forget about, the brachialis and the brachioradialis. Now, technically, these are not bicep muscles, but they can give you the illusion you're looking for a larger arm, especially in that lower portion. The brachialis sits in between the lower part of the bicep and tricep, and when you grow this, it expands your lower arm. These general regions can really help make your arms look bigger, as well as targeting the 2 heads of the biceps, starting with the long head of the bicep, or really what we call the bicep peak. This is going to be targeted anytime we get the shoulder into a more stretched position and elbows behind the body. It can be a great way to target a little bit more tension into the long head of the bicep. On the flip side of that, if we want to target the short head of the bicep, which is that inner bicep region that gives you more of that fullness and thickness to the bicep, you're going to want to get your elbows in front of the body like in preacher curls. Again, and the way I like to do that is with hammer curl variations or neutral grip curls, where we never supinate the arm and allow the bicep to be removed from the equation actually a little bit and preferentiate tension more to the brachialis and brachioradialis. So your crossbody hammer curls, your cable hammer curls, things like this are going to really target that brachialis and brachioradialis. So a resistance curve, that's number 1 we're dealing with, that is basically where your muscle is strongest or weakest at, or aka can produce the most force at a given muscle length. So like near the top of a curl when you're contracting the hardest, or when the muscle belly is in its most stretched state, like at the bottom of a curl when your bicep is most elongated, you're actually at the weakest points during those 2 phases. A strength curve is basically the same thing but applied to the exercise. So like let's take a squat for instance. This is what we call an ascending strength curve. In the bottom or the whole of the squat, it is the hardest portion of the exercise. Near lockout, it's the easiest part of the exercise. Parabolic strength curve, for instance, would be where it's easy at the beginning, hard in the middle, easy again at the top, kind of like a barbell curl. Or we also have things like descending strength curves, but basically your resistance curve is how hard an exercise is based on the muscle length of the muscle you're training. And a strength curve is how difficult the exercise is based on its physics of where that exercise is at a given point in the range of motion. So I really like to think of the strength curve and resistance profiles of exercises in your muscle bellies in 3 main categories. We have the peak contraction exercises, things like your spider curls or your preacher curls, where you're really focusing on getting a peak contraction and not so much the elongation or stretching of the muscle belly. Then we have peak stretch exercises, which are the opposite, kind of like your incline dumbbell curls or cable stretch curls, where we're really focused on getting a stretch into the muscle belly and the eccentric loading, and maybe not quite as much as a peak contraction in that fully contracted, full shoulder flex state of the bicep. And then lastly, we have our overload exercises. These are going to be the things that match the strength curve to the resistance curve of your muscle bellies very clean to allow for the most overload. Your standing barbell curls or dumbbell curls or hammer curls are actually perfect variations to use here. So we'll catch you guys in the next one.